This is a Sargesian audio production, copyright Sarges 2016. For more www.sargesian.wordpress.com. This is a sample chapter of The Steelies of Oakland Park. Chapter 40. I am without a doubt the best savories maker that I know, do you not think? Asked Mrs. James. Indeed, my wife is a dab hand at the making of sweetmeats, said the clergyman. You must try my pigeon pie, said Mrs. James as she lifted the silver cover from the dish upon which lay a plump bird in a layer of congealed gravy. It looks wonderful. I shall have a piece, said Sophia. The reverend gentleman's guests sat down to eat, Captain Aubrey having decided to forego the offered pigeon as he had heard much of Mrs. James's custard pudding which was to be served later. In the meantime he contented himself with a glass of port. I have seldom seen a dish with an aroma of such fragrance, said Sophia. Pray do tell me, Mrs. James, what is this fragrance, for I have not come across it before? Asked Sophia as she placed the first mouthful in her mouth. It is a Calcutta curry from India, somewhat different to the fare we are used to, but wholesome and good for a cold, said Mrs. James. Sophia, it seemed, had grown quite flushed. Tears greased the corners of her eyes and a sweat broke upon her forehead. I fear that I am unwell, she gasped, taking a sip of water from a glass near at hand. Oh dear, what is amiss, Mrs. Aubrey? You are quite red with exertion. You must lay down, I fear, said Mrs. James, rising from her seat. Yes, if I lay down I will recover, said Sophia faintly. Yes, step this way, there is a room where you can rest, said Mrs. James. Later you can finish your dinner. I am quite surprised, for just a moment ago you were quite well. Could it be that you have a little bundle to deliver? Asked Mrs. James with a twinkle in her eye. For she was a woman wise to the world and knew that young women of Sophia's age did within a year after marriage bring forth bundles of joy. It gave her great pride that when in years to come the captain would speak of the announcement of the arrival of their firstborn would be due to her famous pigeon curry. The ladies having left the room, the gentlemen were left quite alone with nothing much to say. The reverend gentleman eyed the plate upon which Sophia had been feasting and then looked knowingly towards the captain. I fear that the pigeon will be quite spoilt, said the clergyman. Captain Aubrey, perceiving that the older gentleman would show no mercy, knew where his duty lay. Saying bravely, well, there is nothing for it, I shall have to dispose of the bird, and moved Sophia's plate to his and begun to eat the dish. The first bit of the dish had but a small effect upon the brave seaman, for he had previously eaten curry while on active service in the Indies. However, he began to taste a certain discrepancy. It was at this moment that Mrs. James returned and took once more her seat. I trust the pigeon is to your liking? She inquired of the captain. Indeed, a fragrant dish, one of the best I have ever tasted. The captain gasped as a sweat began to break from his forehead. Pray, what is its construction? He asked of the woman. It must be soaked in the curry powder for a day and a half before certain other elements are added, then boiled in a soup of water and oil, replied the lady. This was indeed a surprise to the good Navy man, for he had never heard of the dish been prepared like this, and he knew his curries. Remarkable, quite remarkable, said the captain, reaching for the glass of sherry. He had learned his lesson previously and knew better than poor Sophia to drink water, for water, it seemed, only increased the pain one felt within one's mouth after eating a curry. To the captain it seemed that the poor pigeon, having died, had been subjected to the cruelest of fates, having fallen into the hands of a woman who believed herself to be the best cook in the world, but was in fact a dangerous weapon indeed. If the good woman had ever been a cook in the armies of Wellington or the navy of Nelson, she would have been the most formidable weapon in Bonaparte's grand army. Nevertheless, to preserve the duty placed upon him by society, he continued to eat the poor bird, for it would have been considered most offensive if he had not. As the newest member of Sir Thomas's family, it was incumbent upon him that he make a good impression upon the clergyman and his wife, for the most reverend gentleman had always been most obliging to the Steelies when called upon to be of service to the family. For it was well known that he had been instrumental of ridding Morton of the ghost of poor Lord John. to have in any way offended him in any way, even to the extent of his wife's efforts in the culinary field, would it seem be an insult to the good people of Northanger. Thus on he soldiered through the battlefield that was the dish, much to the delight of the reverend gentleman's wife, who continued to make remarks and receive high praise from the brave captain. After the meal Sophia had quite recovered, while her brave husband refused the proffered custard pie, saying the curried pigeon was quite enough for him. Shortly thereafter the Aubreys took their leave of the clergyman and his wife, who stood upon the front step of the rectory enjoying the view as the coach made its departure. The good woman, waving to Sophia, remarked that what an excellent gentleman the captain was, and what good taste he had. For she had seen that he had indeed emptied the plate. It was a pity that he had not seen his way clear to a slice of custard pie. However, it was to be expected these naval sorts are seldom big eaters. This all she said to her good husband, who, ever mindful of his wife's desire to impress upon their guests the skill with which she employed herself in the kitchen, made him smile. If you have enjoyed this sample audio chapter of The Studies of Oakland Park by the ebook or the hard copy at the link below.